The next morning, she woke up before the children, feeling the quiet weight of the house around her. The sunlight streamed softly through the windows, and she could hear the faint sounds of birds outside, as if the world itself was offering a gentle greeting. Today, she knew, would be a test of patience, courage, and love. She had survived the first day, but the real challenge was beginning, learning to care for 7 children, each with their own personality, needs, and past experiences. She reminded herself that she could not do everything perfectly, but she could try, and that was enough for now. As the children began to stir, she noticed the small habits that made them unique. One child, the youngest, immediately ran to her with a stuffed animal clutched in his tiny hands. He had wide, trusting eyes that reminded her of a puppy, full of hope and curiosity. Another child, a quiet girl, lingered behind, unsure whether to approach. She kept to herself, observing carefully before speaking, and seemed to carry a small sadness in her expression. She realized that each child had a story, experiences that shaped who they were, and she had to learn to respect those stories while helping them grow. Breakfast was an adventure in itself. 7 children moved around the kitchen, each with a different request or need. Some were hungry and impatient, some wanted to help, and others needed encouragement to even sit down. She tried to manage the chaos with calm words and gentle gestures. At first, the children tested her patience: spilled milk, arguments over seats, and complaints about food. But she remained firm yet kind, explaining why they needed to wait, share, or eat carefully. Slowly, the children began to respond, their initial resistance softening as they realized she would not lose her temper. Her patience became a quiet authority, one the children could trust. After breakfast, she began the difficult task of organizing the house. The children had routines, but the home had lacked structure. She started with small tasks, such as helping them make their beds, cleaning the dishes together, and arranging their belongings so everything had a place. She spoke to them calmly, encouraging them to take pride in their surroundings. Slowly, the house began to feel less chaotic and more like a home. She noticed the children starting to cooperate, offering small smiles and quiet thanks. It was not perfection, but it was progress, and it gave her hope. In the morning hours, she tried to engage the children in activities that could build trust and closeness. She asked about their interests, their favorite games, and the stories they liked. Some children were shy and hesitant to share, while others eagerly described their drawings, books, or dreams. She listened carefully, showing genuine interest, and this small attention made a big difference. The children began to see her not just as a stranger, but as someone who cared about who they were. They tested her, of course, pushing boundaries, asking questions, and occasionally ignoring instructions, but she remained steady. Each test was an opportunity to show them consistency, kindness, and understanding. Schoolwork was another challenge. The children had different levels of education, and some struggled with basic subjects. She spent hours at the kitchen table helping them with reading, writing, and arithmetic. Sometimes frustration rose, either hers or the children's, but she learned to take deep breaths and approach each problem patiently. When one child understood a difficult concept, the smile that spread across their face was reward enough. She felt a growing sense of accomplishment. Slowly, she realized that her role was not only to care for their basic needs, but also to nurture their minds, to help them grow into confident, capable individuals. The children also had emotional needs. Some were anxious, some lonely, and some simply wanted attention. She discovered that listening was sometimes more important than giving advice or instructions. Sitting with a child who was sad, holding their hand and letting them express their feelings became part of her daily routine. The children began to open up, sharing small details of their lives, their fears, and their hopes. They spoke of missing their father, of feeling uncertain about the future, and of wishing for someone who would understand them. She realized that she could be that person, not a replacement for their father, but a mother who could provide stability, love, and support. Over time, she began to notice small changes in the children's behavior. Arguments became less frequent, laughter more common, and cooperation easier. They started to approach her without hesitation, asking for help or sharing a joke. She encouraged them to take part in household chores, teaching them that responsibility was part of growing up. Together, they cleaned, cooked, and organized, turning tasks into opportunities for bonding. She celebrated small victories with them: a completed homework assignment, a well-made bed, or a kind gesture toward a sibling. Every little success strengthened the bonds she was forming with them. Mealtimes, once chaotic, became moments of connection. She learned the children's favorite dishes, preparing meals that made them feel loved and cared for. They began to help her in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, stirring ingredients, and setting the table. In these simple moments, laughter filled the air, and the house felt warmer, fuller, and alive. She began to realize that family was not defined by a husband or perfect circumstances, but by love, care, and shared experiences. The children, too, seemed to understand that she was becoming someone they could depend on. Evenings brought quieter, more intimate moments. She read stories to the children before bed, and sometimes they shared their dreams and fears aloud. These moments were precious, filled with trust and emotional connection. She discovered that bedtime routines, singing, storytelling, gentle reassurance helped the children feel safe and loved. Over time, the quiet resistance she had encountered on the first day faded. They began to seek comfort in her presence, and she in turn learned to find joy and meaning in their smiles, laughter, and the simple touch of a hand held in trust. Outside the house, the town itself presented new challenges and opportunities. The children needed school supplies, appointments, and social activities, and she quickly learned to navigate these responsibilities. Every trip outside became a chance to show care, guide behavior, and provide security. Neighbors and locals were curious about the new woman in town, and while some were skeptical, others admired her patience, dedication, and love for the children. She was becoming not just a caretaker, but a central figure in their lives, a mother in all but name. She also began to learn more about the children's personalities. One boy loved sports and had endless energy, often needing guidance to channel it positively. A quiet girl found comfort in books and drawing, and she nurtured her creativity. Another child was shy and hesitant, needing extra reassurance to feel safe and confident. Understanding these differences was crucial. She learned to adjust her approach for each child, offering patience, encouragement, or gentle discipline when needed. In doing so, she began to realize that motherhood was not about perfection. It was about presence, understanding, and consistent love. Despite the progress, there were moments of doubt. She sometimes wondered if she was doing enough, if she was capable of raising 7 children without the presence of a husband. Some nights she sat alone in the quiet house, reflecting on her own fears and insecurities. But each time she reminded herself that love and commitment were stronger than fear. Every small smile, every hug, every thank you from a child reminded her why she had chosen this path. She was building something meaningful, even if it was different from what she had originally imagined. By the end of the second week, the house had begun to feel like a home. The children laughed more, argued less, and were more willing to follow her guidance. They had started to form routines, and she had begun to feel confident in her role. She was still learning, still adjusting, but the bond between her and the children was undeniable. Slowly, she realized that what she had feared most, the overwhelming responsibility of 7 children, was also the greatest opportunity of her life. She had arrived as a stranger, uncertain and nervous, but she was beginning to transform into the mother they needed. And as she lay down to rest each night, listening to the peaceful breathing of the children around her, she felt a quiet satisfaction. She had faced the unexpected, embraced the challenge, and begun to build trust, love, and stability. The days ahead would continue to be difficult, but she now understood something essential. Family was not about how it began, but how it grew. With patience, care, and unwavering love, she could guide these children, nurture their hearts, and become the mother they had silently wished for. The journey was only beginning, but already in these small victories she had discovered the joy and meaning of motherhood. She had always dreamed of starting a new life. Her days in her small hometown had been quiet and uneventful, filled with the familiar routines of family and friends. Yet in her heart she longed for something more. She wanted adventure, a place where she could make a difference, and a family of her own. When she first heard about the possibility of becoming a mail-order bride, she felt a mixture of hope and fear. It was a strange idea, being paired with someone she had never met, someone far away across an ocean. But the more she thought about it, the more it seemed like a chance she could not pass up. She wanted to believe that love and life could take unexpected turns and still bring joy. She spent weeks preparing for her journey. She learned the basics of the new language, read about the town she would live in, and packed carefully, making sure to bring only what she could carry on the long flight. Every item she chose had a purpose: a few clothes for herself, some small gifts she thought might be appreciated, and a diary to record her thoughts and experiences. Her family had been worried. They had warned her that the life she was choosing could be unpredictable and difficult, but they also saw the determination in her eyes. They knew she had always been strong, willing to face challenges that others would shy away from. Their blessings were mixed with tears and prayers, but in the end, she left with courage and hope. The flight felt long and strange. She watched the clouds shift and change beneath her, thinking about the new world that awaited her. Every hour brought her closer to the unknown, and though nervousness tugged at her heart, she reminded herself that every journey began with a first step. She imagined meeting her husband, imagining how he might look and what he might be like. Would he be kind, funny, serious? She did not know. The only thing she could be certain of was her own willingness to make this adventure meaningful. When she arrived, the airport was crowded and full of people moving in every direction. Her stomach tightened as she looked around, searching for the person she had been promised. A man holding a small sign with her name written neatly on it appeared, and she felt a flicker of relief. She smiled, hoping he would smile back. He did in a polite way, but there was something in his eyes she did not understand, a mix of distraction and hurry. He spoke briefly, explaining that there had been some delays at home and that they needed to leave quickly. She nodded, still trusting that everything would make sense soon. The ride to the house was longer than she expected. The roads were quiet and lined with trees that seemed taller and older than anything she had seen before. She could feel her excitement building with every turn, imagining the new home where she would begin her life. But when the car stopped and she stepped out into the yard, she realized that something was not as she had imagined. The house was large and somewhat old, with paint peeling in places, and the front door creaked as it swung open. Inside, the smell of the home was familiar, like an old house full of memories, but there was no one there to greet her, no warm welcome. She looked around, calling softly, but the rooms were empty except for a collection of small shoes and backpacks scattered near the entrance. Then she heard a voice. It was soft, curious, almost hesitant. Turning a corner, she saw a small child peeking at her with wide eyes. Then another appeared and another, until 7 children stood before her. Each of them looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and caution. Their expressions were not of anger or fear, but of uncertainty. They had been expecting someone different, someone who would come and take care of things, and here she was, a stranger. Her heart raced. She had not prepared for this. She had imagined arriving to meet a husband, not to find herself suddenly responsible for 7 children who were strangers in every way. At first she felt frozen. How could she care for them all? She had never been a mother, never taken care of children in this way. They looked to her for answers, for comfort, for something she did not know how to provide yet. Her mind swirled with questions. Where was her husband? Why was he not here? Had there been some mistake? And yet, even in the middle of her shock, she felt something stir in her heart. These children, who had no one to greet them properly, were now looking at her. And she realized that maybe she had arrived at this moment for a reason she did not yet understand. The first few hours were awkward and tense. She tried to talk to the children, asking their names, learning about their daily routines, and figuring out what they liked to eat. Some answered cautiously, some simply stared, and 1 or 2 giggled nervously, unsure what to make of this new presence in their home. She moved carefully, making small gestures, offering a smile, showing them a snack, and gently asking if she could help with their homework. She stumbled a few times, mispronouncing words, mixing up names, but she never gave up. Her patience became her strongest tool. As the day turned into evening, she learned more about the children's lives. She discovered who liked to draw, who was afraid of the dark, who loved animals, and who enjoyed helping in the kitchen. She watched them as they moved about the house, their routines ingrained but slightly chaotic. Cleaning up their toys, helping with small chores, and listening to their stories, she began to feel a connection forming, even if it was fragile at first. She realized that trust would take time, but the willingness to try had already begun to bridge the distance between them. Night came, and with it, a quiet moment of reflection. She sat in the living room watching the children settle into their bedrooms and felt a mixture of exhaustion and wonder. Her journey had been intended to bring her to a husband, a partner, and a home. Instead, it had brought her to 7 children who needed care, love, and guidance. She thought about her own dreams and the life she had imagined, realizing that the path ahead would be different from anything she had planned. Yet deep inside, she felt a spark of determination. She would not let fear stop her. If she could face this unknown with courage, perhaps she could create something beautiful. A family forged not by circumstance, but by love. The first night was quiet, but not lonely. She lay awake, listening to the soft sounds of children breathing in their sleep, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on her shoulders. She knew the days ahead would be challenging. There would be questions she could not answer, tears she would have to soothe, and moments when she would doubt herself. But in that silence, she also felt a strange sense of hope. These children were not just strangers. They were the beginning of something meaningful. And she, in this unexpected twist of fate, had the chance to become the person they had been waiting for, even if they did not know it yet. By the time morning came, she was ready to face the day. She learned the small details, how each child took their breakfast, how they dressed, and what they needed to start the day. She laughed at little mistakes and mishaps, slowly earning smiles and tentative trust in return. Each small interaction built a bridge between her and the children, a bridge that would grow stronger with time. And though she still did not know where her husband was, she understood that the life she had imagined was changing, evolving into something unexpected, but possibly more rewarding than she had ever hoped. Her heart, once filled with nervous anticipation, now held a cautious excitement. This was her journey, her story, and though it had begun in surprise and uncertainty, it had also begun in hope, courage, and the quiet promise of love. She knew that the road ahead would be long, but she also knew that she had the strength to walk it, and maybe, just maybe, she could become the mother these children had been silently wishing for. Days turned into weeks, and slowly, the house began to feel more like a home. She had learned the children's routines, their habits, and the little things that made each of them unique. Each morning, she woke up knowing that her life had changed, forever. But with a growing sense of purpose and confidence, she had discovered that the true challenge of motherhood was not just caring for children's needs, but understanding their hearts, earning their trust, and helping them grow into their best selves. Every day brought new lessons, small victories, and even setbacks, but she approached each moment with patience and love. She noticed that some of the children had deeply ingrained habits from living without a steady parental figure. One boy, full of energy and curiosity, often tested boundaries. He would run through the house, knock over toys, or refuse to listen when asked to help. At first, she found this frustrating, feeling unsure of how to respond. But gradually, she realized that he needed guidance, structure, and clear expectations, not anger or punishment. She spoke calmly, explained why certain behaviors were not acceptable, and offered alternative ways for him to use his energy. Slowly, he began to respond. He still had moments of mischief, but they became opportunities for teaching rather than sources of conflict. Another child, a quiet girl, seemed withdrawn at first. She rarely spoke, and often stayed close to the corner of a room, observing but not engaging. She had learned that the world could be unpredictable, and it had made her cautious. The woman made an effort to include her gently, inviting her to help with meals, to draw alongside her, or to read a story together. She never forced her to speak or participate, understanding that trust could not be rushed. Over time, the girl began to open up, her shy smile appearing more often, and her voice joining the laughter of the household. It was a small, steady triumph, showing that patience and consistent care could work wonders. Mealtimes continued to be both challenging and rewarding. She prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner with care, learning each child's preferences and dietary needs. She encouraged them to help in the kitchen, giving them small tasks that made them feel capable and responsible. Chopping vegetables, stirring sauces, and setting the table became moments of teamwork and bonding. Sometimes the food was not perfect or the kitchen became messy with spills and laughter, but she embraced the chaos. She realized that these shared moments were more than just meals. They were lessons in cooperation, care, and connection. Homework and school were another area where her presence made a difference. Some children struggled with reading, writing, or arithmetic, and they had become discouraged over time. She spent long afternoons at the kitchen table, patiently guiding them, breaking problems into smaller steps and celebrating every success. When a child finally solved a difficult equation or read a challenging sentence aloud, she would cheer and offer praise, watching their confidence grow. Slowly, she saw that learning was not just about knowledge, it was about encouragement, reassurance, and the belief that they could succeed. Emotional support was just as important as practical guidance. She learned to listen carefully, offering comfort when a child was sad or anxious. Sometimes a child would cry over missing their father, or worry about being alone, or feel frustrated with school or siblings. She never dismissed their feelings. Instead, she sat beside them, held their hands, and offered words of reassurance. "I am here," she would say softly. "You are safe, and I care about you." These small statements, repeated day after day, began to build a foundation of trust. The children were learning that she could be counted on, that she would not leave, and that her love was steady. As the days went by, small moments of joy became more frequent. Laughter filled the rooms, and even arguments became opportunities for teaching kindness and cooperation. She taught the children how to share, how to apologize, and how to respect one another's feelings. Slowly, they began to listen, to understand, and to respond in kind. She was not just enforcing rules. She was teaching them how to care for each other, how to build relationships based on trust and love. And as they learned, she learned too. She discovered the power of patience, the joy of seeing children grow, and the deep satisfaction of knowing she was making a real difference in their lives. The woman also discovered creative ways to bond with the children. She introduced arts and crafts, encouraging them to express themselves through drawing, painting, or making small projects. She read stories aloud, allowing the children to explore new worlds and ideas while sitting close together. Sometimes, they went on small outings, to the park, the library, or nearby fields, where they could run, play, and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. These shared experiences became treasured memories, moments when laughter, learning, and love intertwined. The children were beginning to see her not just as a caregiver, but as a friend, a guide, and someone who genuinely cared about their happiness. Conflict still arose, of course. There were days when the house was loud, when patience wore thin, and when a child's stubbornness tested her resolve. She learned to approach these moments calmly, using consistent rules and gentle discipline. She explained the consequences of actions but also offered choices, encouraging responsibility and decision-making. Sometimes the children resisted, but over time, they began to understand that her guidance came from care, not punishment. This understanding strengthened their bond and trust deepened. They started to look to her for advice, comfort, and encouragement, and she realized that she was becoming an irreplaceable part of their lives. Evenings became a special time. After baths and dinner, she would gather the children together for stories, games, or quiet conversation. She listened to their dreams, their worries, and their stories from school. Some nights, tears were shared, but so were laughter and excitement. She encouraged them to share with one another, teaching empathy, patience, and kindness. In these moments, the children's personalities shone. They began to care for each other more, to cooperate, and to express love in small but meaningful ways. The household, once quiet and tense, was now filled with warmth, energy, and growing trust. She also learned to care for herself in the midst of this demanding routine. She realized that to be patient and loving, she needed rest, reflection, and small moments of peace. Early mornings or late nights became times for her to write in her diary, to reflect on the progress and to plan the next day. She celebrated small victories in her mind, smiles, hugs, completed chores, or shared laughter. These reflections reminded her that while motherhood was exhausting, it was also deeply fulfilling. She had the power to shape lives, to nurture hearts, and to build a family out of love and patience. Neighbors and locals began to notice the changes in the household. People who had been skeptical or curious began to see her dedication, patience, and love for the children. Some offered advice, support, or small gestures of kindness. She accepted help graciously but remained focused on the children's needs, understanding that the most important work was being done within the walls of the home. Slowly, the children themselves began to feel pride in their home, in the routines, and in the love they were sharing. They were learning that family was more than biology. It was commitment, care, and shared responsibility. By the end of the third month, her role as a mother figure was becoming clear. The children sought her out for comfort, guidance, and friendship. They laughed, played, and sometimes argued, but the underlying bond of trust had formed. She had transformed from a stranger into someone essential to their daily lives. She realized that motherhood was not something that happened overnight. It was built moment by moment with patience, care, and unconditional love. She felt proud of what she had achieved and hopeful for what was to come. Through all of this, she never lost sight of her original dream, to build a life filled with love and meaning. Though the husband she had expected to meet was still absent, she understood that her purpose had found her in an unexpected way. She was not just surviving, she was thriving, and so were the children. Together, they were building a family forged not by circumstance, but by love, trust, and shared experiences. And in that realization, she found a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that she had become the mother the children had silently wished for, even before they knew they needed her. As the days passed, her bond with the children grew deeper and stronger. The home that had once been filled with uncertainty and silence was now alive with laughter, chatter, and the small noises of daily life. She had begun to understand not only their habits and routines, but also their personalities, fears, and dreams. Each child had a unique way of showing love, seeking attention, or asking for comfort, and she learned to respond with patience, understanding, and gentle guidance. Her role as their mother figure was no longer just a title she was trying to earn. It had become a reality, felt in the smiles, hugs, and trust of the children around her. Some days were easier than others, but every day presented opportunities for growth, for both the children and herself. She began to notice changes in the children that filled her with pride. The boy who had once tested every boundary now asked for guidance before acting. The quiet girl who had stayed in the corner now shared her drawings and ideas freely. The children started to help each other more, resolving small conflicts with advice she had given, or offering comfort when one of their siblings was upset. Slowly, the household had transformed from a group of uncertain children and a stranger into a true family unit, connected by care and love. She also faced moments of doubt and struggle. Some nights, when the children were asleep, she would sit quietly in the living room feeling the weight of her responsibilities. Caring for 7 children was not easy. It demanded constant attention, emotional energy, and patience. There were days when one child cried for attention, while another refused to listen. And she had to balance love, discipline, and guidance carefully. Yet in these moments, she reminded herself that she was capable, that every challenge was an opportunity to strengthen the bond with the children, and that love was the foundation that would guide her. One of the most important lessons she learned was the power of listening. Many of the children had fears or worries that they had never shared with an adult before. Some were anxious about school, others missed their absent father, and some simply worried about not being understood. She spent time each day sitting with them, encouraging them to speak and listening without judgment. When a child shared a fear, she acknowledged it, offering comfort and practical solutions. Sometimes it was as simple as holding a hand, listening patiently, or saying, "I understand. I am here with you." These small acts of presence and attention became powerful tools in building trust and emotional security. As she continued to nurture the children, she also encouraged them to explore their interests and talents. The artistic girl spent hours drawing, painting, and creating small projects, and she made sure to praise her work and display it proudly. The energetic boy loved sports and outdoor activities, so she found ways for him to run, play, and develop his skills safely. Other children discovered reading, music, or helping in the kitchen, and she celebrated each small achievement. By recognizing their individual talents, she showed the children that they were valued for who they were, not just for their behavior or accomplishments. She also introduced routines and structure, understanding that children thrive when they know what to expect. Mornings were for getting ready for school, with small tasks assigned to each child. Afternoons were for homework, chores, and playtime. Evenings were reserved for family meals, quiet reflection, and bedtime stories. She made sure that each child had a role in the household, teaching responsibility and teamwork. The children responded well to this structure, and she noticed that their confidence and cooperation increased. They began to feel a sense of pride in their home and in themselves. Despite the many responsibilities, she never forgot the importance of fun and joy. She organized small games, creative projects, and outdoor activities that allowed the children to laugh, explore, and bond. Sometimes they would have impromptu dance parties in the living room, or go on nature walks to explore the neighborhood. These moments of joy were not just entertainment. They were opportunities to strengthen relationships, teach teamwork, and create memories that would last a lifetime. The children began to see her not just as a caregiver, but as someone who could share happiness with them, someone they could trust and enjoy being with. Challenges still arose. Siblings argued, homework became frustrating, and occasionally a child would act out in anger or sadness. She had to find ways to navigate these moments with patience and fairness. She learned to set clear boundaries, offer guidance, and remain calm even when emotions ran high. She taught the children how to express their feelings without hurting others, how to apologize, and how to resolve conflicts peacefully. Slowly, the children began to internalize these lessons, learning that love did not mean allowing chaos, but creating a safe, respectful, and caring environment. Her own growth continued as well. She learned how to manage her time, prioritize tasks, and balance her energy between practical responsibilities and emotional care. She discovered that being a mother meant constantly learning, adapting, and finding creative solutions. Some days were exhausting, but each small success, each smile, and each moment of trust reinforced her belief that she was making a real difference. She began to feel a deep sense of fulfillment, knowing that her life had meaning and purpose beyond what she had imagined before she arrived. Community support also played a role in strengthening the household. Neighbors began to notice the changes in the children and their behavior, offering kind words, advice, or help when needed. Local teachers noticed improvements in the children's performance at school and sometimes shared encouragement and support. Though she initially worried about judgment or skepticism, she found that her dedication and love for the children spoke for itself. Slowly, the household gained respect and recognition in the community, and she felt a sense of pride in what they had accomplished together. One of the most rewarding experiences came from the children themselves. They began to seek her out for comfort, advice, and companionship. They asked for her help with school projects, shared secrets and dreams, and even offered small acts of kindness in return. A hug here, a whispered thank you there, or a small handmade gift became evidence that the children saw her as a mother figure, someone essential to their lives. She realized that motherhood was not about having a title or fulfilling expectations. It was about building trust, providing love, and being present in every moment. Even when it was difficult, holidays, birthdays, and special occasions became opportunities for celebration and connection. She made sure to create traditions, decorate the house, and prepare special meals. She taught the children the importance of gratitude, generosity, and caring for one another. These celebrations, though sometimes simple, filled the home with warmth and joy. They created memories that the children would carry with them forever, teaching them that family was not just about who was present, but about the love, effort, and thoughtfulness shared among them. As the months passed, she saw remarkable changes in the children. They were happier, more confident, and more connected to one another. Arguments became less frequent, cooperation increased, and their emotional resilience grew. She watched them thrive, feeling immense pride in their growth and development. Each success, no matter how small, was a reminder that her patience, love, and dedication were making a difference. She understood that her role as a mother was not temporary or limited. It was enduring, and it had the power to shape lives in meaningful ways. Through all of this, she reflected on her own journey. She had arrived expecting a husband, a new home, and a life built on traditional expectations. Instead, she had found something entirely unexpected: 7 children who needed her love, guidance, and care. The initial shock and fear she had felt had transformed into purpose, confidence, and deep fulfillment. She realized that sometimes life's most meaningful opportunities do not arrive as planned. They come unexpectedly, challenging us, stretching us, and ultimately rewarding us with experiences and connections far beyond our imagination. By the end of this period, the home had fully transformed. The children were thriving, routines were established, and trust had become a foundation of their daily lives. She had become more than a caregiver. She had become the mother they had been silently wishing for. They looked to her for guidance, comfort, and love, and she in turn found joy and purpose in their presence. Together, they had created a family not defined by circumstance, but by love, patience, and the unwavering commitment to one another. Even in quiet moments, when the children were asleep and the house was calm, she felt a profound sense of peace. She had faced uncertainty, embraced challenges, and transformed a chaotic house into a home filled with laughter, learning, and love. She had discovered the true meaning of motherhood, not in expectation but in action, presence, and dedication. And as she looked forward to the future, she knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as a family bound not by accident, but by choice, love, and shared experiences. By now, the household had transformed completely. What had once been a house of uncertainty, silence, and confusion had become a home filled with warmth, laughter, and love. She had worked tirelessly to understand the children, to care for them, and to create routines that made their days predictable and safe. She had faced moments of doubt, exhaustion, and fear, but through patience, perseverance, and unconditional love, she had built bonds that were strong and unbreakable. She had become the mother these children had silently wished for, even before they knew they needed her. The children had grown in confidence and happiness. The once quiet and withdrawn girl now spoke freely, sharing stories and laughing with her siblings. The energetic boy had learned to channel his energy into productive activities, helping his younger siblings and participating in household tasks. The other children, too, had blossomed, showing care for each other, developing their own talents, and learning to navigate challenges with resilience. She watched them with pride, realizing that her dedication and guidance had helped shape them into confident, capable, and loving individuals. Even their school performance had improved. The children, encouraged and supported, were learning more effectively and enjoying their studies. They had started asking questions, seeking help when needed, and taking pride in their achievements. She had spent countless hours helping with homework, reading with them, and teaching lessons in patience, persistence, and curiosity. And while it had sometimes been exhausting, the results were visible and heartwarming. The children's eyes now sparkled with confidence, and their smiles reflected the security and love they felt in their home. Outside the home, her reputation in the community had grown. Neighbors who had once been skeptical now admired her dedication and patience. Teachers praised the children's improvement and noted the positive changes in their behavior. Some neighbors offered advice, others shared small gestures of support, and all recognized the transformation that had taken place. She had become a respected figure, not because she had arrived as a mail-order bride, but because she had chosen to embrace a family in need and to nurture it with unwavering love. Holidays, birthdays, and celebrations became special highlights of their life together. She made sure that every child felt valued and celebrated. Birthdays were marked with homemade decorations, carefully prepared meals, and small gifts that brought joy. She taught the children the importance of kindness, sharing, and gratitude. Together, they celebrated traditions, created new ones, and built memories that would last a lifetime. These moments were more than festivities. They were opportunities for the children to feel belonging, joy, and love, and for her to witness the true rewards of her care. Challenges still existed, of course. Occasionally, disagreements arose, frustrations surfaced, and the chaos of 7 children tested her patience. But she had learned how to navigate these moments with grace and firmness. She taught the children to communicate their feelings, to apologize when necessary, and to support each other in times of difficulty. Slowly, they began to rely on one another, creating a network of love and cooperation within the household. Her guidance had helped them understand that family was not just about living under the same roof. It was about respect, empathy, and the willingness to care for each other unconditionally. Through it all, she reflected on her journey. She had arrived expecting a husband, a partner to share her life, and a home built on traditional expectations. Instead, she had found herself responsible for 7 children who were strangers just weeks before. At first, fear and uncertainty had filled her heart, but now she understood that life sometimes presents unexpected paths that lead to the most meaningful experiences. She realized that motherhood was not defined by biology or planning. It was defined by love, commitment, and the courage to embrace responsibility wholeheartedly. The children had become her family in every sense. They sought her guidance, leaned on her for comfort, and celebrated successes with her. They no longer saw her as an outsider or a temporary presence. They saw her as their mother, their protector, and the person who loved them unconditionally. In turn, she had grown to love them deeply, cherishing each smile, each hug, and even each challenge that had shaped her into the parent they needed. Her life had changed in ways she could never have imagined, and she found joy and fulfillment in every aspect of her role. She also noticed small, unexpected moments of gratitude and affection from the children. A handmade card, a whispered "I love you," or a spontaneous hug reminded her daily of the bond they shared. These small gestures were priceless, proving that her efforts had been recognized and appreciated. Even in the midst of busy mornings, homework struggles, and household chores, she could feel the depth of their connection. She realized that love was not measured by perfection or grand gestures, but by presence, consistency, and attention to the hearts of those you care for. As time passed, the children became more independent, confident, and supportive of each other. They learned to solve problems, to care for one another, and to approach life with curiosity and resilience. She had not only provided guidance and care, but had also empowered them to grow into individuals capable of navigating the world with courage and empathy. Watching them thrive filled her heart with pride and satisfaction. Every small step forward, every smile, every achievement was proof that love and patience could transform lives. She also reflected on her own transformation. She had arrived unsure, nervous, and seeking a life with a husband. Yet she had discovered a deeper purpose, one that had tested her limits, expanded her capacity for love, and allowed her to build a family in a way she had never anticipated. She had learned patience, resilience, and the true meaning of unconditional love. Her life, once guided by expectations and plans, had been reshaped by circumstance, courage, and heart. She now understood that happiness and fulfillment are often found in places we never expect, in roles we never imagined, and in connections that grow from genuine care. As the years went by, the family continued to grow stronger together. The children flourished in school, friendships, and personal pursuits. They supported one another, celebrated each other's achievements, and found comfort in the loving environment she had created. She remained a steady presence, offering guidance, encouragement, and care through every challenge and triumph. Their bond was unshakable, built on trust, love, and shared experiences that had created a sense of security and belonging that each child had longed for. In quiet moments, she reflected on the extraordinary journey she had undertaken. She had arrived in a foreign country expecting one life, only to find another entirely. Yet in embracing the unexpected, she had discovered a fulfillment deeper than she had ever imagined. She had become the mother the children wished for, the guiding light in their lives and the source of love, comfort, and stability. Together they had built a family not defined by circumstance but by heart, commitment, and shared experiences. Her life was now full, vibrant, and meaningful. She had learned that family is not about perfection, about waiting for everything to be ideal, or about following a plan. It is about showing up, loving consistently, and nurturing those in your care. She had seen the profound impact of patience, trust, and unconditional love, and she knew that the lessons she had learned would stay with her forever. The children, too, carried these lessons, learning to love, care, and support each other in ways that would shape their futures positively. And in the end, it was clear that this unexpected journey had been exactly what they all needed. The children had found a mother who loved them unconditionally, guided them patiently, and created a home where they could thrive. She had found a purpose beyond what she could have imagined, a life filled with meaning, love, and joy. Together, they had turned uncertainty into opportunity, challenges into growth, and a house into a home. In the quiet of the evening, as she looked around at the children laughing, playing, and talking, she felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. She had arrived hoping for a life with a husband, and instead she had discovered the profound and life-changing joy of motherhood. The love she shared with these children was deeper than she could have anticipated, stronger than fear, and more fulfilling than any plan she had made. She had become the mother they wished for, and in doing so, she had found the happiness and purpose she had longed for all her life. Their story was no longer about unexpected circumstances or missing parents. It was about resilience, love, and the family they had created together. Every day they continued to grow, laugh, and support one another, and she continued to guide them with patience, wisdom, and unwavering love. In the end, the family had not only survived the uncertainty of the past, they had flourished, proving that love, care, and dedication can overcome any challenge, create lasting bonds, and build a home filled with joy. And so, her life had been transformed completely. She had arrived as a stranger in a new country, uncertain and nervous, and she had become the mother who shaped, nurtured, and loved 7 children with all her heart. Their bond, forged through patience, trust, and countless shared moments, was unbreakable. She had become the family they wished for, the person who would always be there, and the love that would guide.